Okay, I'm going to be working out the review for the test. I sent you a copy of the review that I'm working in a separate email on a PDF that you can print so you'll see what problems I'm working. Number one is talking about using synthetic division to find the function values. So the function is f of x equals x to the third minus 14x squared plus 63x minus 90. And then it wants us to find three different values. To do synthetic divide, the first one is f of 3. So I'm going to, remember, I use the coefficients of each of these. So 1, negative 14, 63, and negative 90. And I'm going to synthetic divide by the first function it wants me to do is 3. Okay, now remember, I drop down this first number, which is 1. I do 3 times 1 gives me 3. And then I add that straight down. So negative 14 plus 3 gives me negative 11. And then I do the process again. I do the 3 times negative 11, which gives me negative 33. And when I go straight down here, I get 30. And again, 3 times 30 gives me 90. So when I go straight down here, negative 90 plus 90 gives me 0, which means there is no remainder. So f of 3 would equal 0, because the remainder is what your answer is. Okay? The second part, it wants me to do the same thing with a negative 5. So I'm using the same numbers for the coefficients. 1, negative 14, 63, and negative 90. When I do the same process, I'll drop down the 1. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Add straight down to get negative 19. Now on my calculator I do negative 5 times negative 19, which gives me 95. When I add straight down, 3 and 5, 8, 6 and 9, 15. So 158. I do the negative 5 times the 158, which gives me negative 790. When I add that to the negative 90, it gives me negative 880. So f of negative 5 is equal to negative 880. And then you do it again with the 6. Okay, I'm not going to go through that whole process again, but there is the third problem. The third part of problem number 1 would do the same thing using a 6 here. Okay, number 2. Find the polynomial function of lowest degree with only real coefficients having the zeros negative 2, or square root of 2, negative square root of 2, and 5. So if it gives me the zeros of the square root of 2, negative square root of 2, and 5. Now remember, going from zeros to find the polynomial function, I need to turn these into the factors that they came from. So remember, it's always x minus whatever the 0 is. So this one would be x minus the square root of 2. This one would be x minus negative square root of 2. So actually x plus the square root of 2. And this 0 would come from x minus 5. So now I'm going to multiply all of these together. I'm going to do these two first, since they are conjugates of each other and those radicals are going to disappear. So if I FOIL this, x times x gives me x squared. The outer x times the square root of 2 is just positive x square root of 2. The inner would be negative x square root of 2, so that's where our cancellation will be. And then negative square root of 4. So, like we said, those two will cancel. I've got x squared minus, since that's the square root of 4, I'm going to turn it to 2. So that's what that ended up being. Now I need to bring down this x minus 5 and then FOIL here. So x squared times x, x to the third, x squared times negative 5 is negative 5x squared, Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 5 is positive 10. So this would be the polynomial function that it came from. Okay? Number 3. Same thing, find a polynomial function that has these zeros, the square root of 5 and 5i. Now, this is back in the section. Remember, if there's a square root of 5 as a 0, there's also a negative square root of 5 as a 0. And if there's a 5i as a 0, then negative 5i is also a 0. So there's actually 4 zeros here that are going to create 4 factors to multiply together. So this first one would be x minus the square root of 5. Then this one would be x plus the square root of 5. This one would create x minus 5i. And this one will create x plus 5i. So again, I'm going to FOIL these two and then FOIL those two because they're conjugates of each other, which means there's going to be a lot of canceling happening. So my first here, x times x gives me x squared. X times the square root of 5 is x square root of 5. The inner would be that negative x square root of 5. And then my last, negative square root of 5 times positive square root of 5 gives me negative square root of 25. So, like we said, these two will cancel in the middle. So there's my x squared that I have left, minus the square root of 25 turns into 5. So I'm done with those. Now I'm going to FOIL these two together. So separate them. So x times x gives me x squared. X times 5i gives me positive 5xi. The inner gives me negative 5xi. And then my last, negative 5i times positive 5i is negative 25i squared. So once again, those will cancel. So I'm just left with that x squared. Now remember over here where we see this I squared always turns to negative 1. So that really says negative 25 times negative 1, which actually makes it plus 25. So we're down to these two binomials that again now we'll FOIL those. So my first, x squared times x squared is x to the 4th. Outer, x squared times 25 is 25x squared. Inner, negative 5 times x squared is negative 5x squared. And then my last, negative 5 times positive 25 is negative 125. These two terms in the middle are both x squared, so I can put those together. So I have x to the 4th, 25 minus 5 gives me plus 20. X squared, bring down the minus 125. Okay, that was number 3. Number 4. The function is x cubed plus 8x squared minus 7x minus 56. It tells me one of the zeros is negative 8, which means I can synthetic divide by this negative 8. So let's start off by doing that. Again, I'll use these coefficients. So 1, 8, negative 7, and negative 56. Drop down the 1. Negative 8 times 1 is negative 8. When I add that down, I get 0. Negative 8 times 0 is 0. Add that straight down, I get negative 7. And negative 8 times negative 7 gives me positive 56. So the remainder is 0, which we knew was going to happen. So now, the result, these coefficients right here, these are going to be coefficients of the polynomial that's left after you synthetic divided by -8. So this, and it's going to be 1 degree less than what we started with. So this will be x squared. There's 0x. And there's -7. So look what we have now. You've got a quad, which means I can go straight to my quad program with this and plug in A is 1, B is 0, C is -7. So once I do that, it will tell me, once I plug it into your quad, to get your other two zeros, which would be, oops, bear with me. Once you plug it in and hit enter, you will see that the other two zeros are positive and negative square root of 7. So there's number 4. Number 5, it gives me a function, f of x equals 11x to the 6th plus 4x to the 3rd plus 9x squared plus 3. Now, it wants me to find all of the possible rational zeros of the function, which means you look at the positive and negative factors of, oh my gosh, my thing's going. The positive and negative factors of the last term, which is positive and -3 and positive and -1. Then the positive and negative factors of the first term, so positive and -11 and positive and -1. So this one was nice because the 3 and the 11, there wasn't that many ways to multiply to get them. Now, you're going to create positive and -3 over both of those. So 3 over 11, positive and -3 over 1, which is just 3. And then do the 1 over both of those. So it'll be positive and -1 over 11 and positive and -1 over 1, which is just positive and -1. So if you're looking at your multiple choice on your sheet, you'll want the one with these answers. So it looks like that would be D.